So what does that mean to you? What is that manager, that leadership type?
Being the kind of leader that I want to lead me.
You're a female leader in your office, a female leader in the state. And what does that mean to you and maybe the other females in your office or the females in the industry?
Earlier in my years in New Hampshire, being the only female but as far as boots on the ground, being out in the field, I was one of the only ones for it had to be years.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of the CCPA Playbook. This is a great episode. I'm super excited for everybody to have listened to the previous episodes. We've gotten some great feedback. We've really enjoyed talking to Darren Pillsbury, Cecil Jackson, and for those that have listened, head softball coach Jay Miller for Lake Sumter State College. Again, if you're really into these things, this is a new thing for government, a podcast platform for Citrus County, specifically Florida, internationally. So this is exciting, and I really hope that if you do like it, please leave comments, leave us some reviews, share it with your friends, share it with your neighbors. But I am very, very, very excited to have with us Wynta from Sarasota County Property Appraiser's Office. Welcome, Wynta. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Craig. It's an honor to be here, and I can tell you I've listened to both Cecil and Darren's podcasts, and it's been great. So again, definitely an honor to be here today with you.
Awesome. Fun fact, I don't know when this episode is going to air, but you are in Sarasota County, and my wife and I are actually headed to Lido Beach this weekend in Sarasota. So we'll be in Sarasota County this weekend.
Very nice. And you're planning to visit St. Armand's Circle? Is that on the list of things to do?
What did you call it?
St. Armand's Circle here in Sarasota. So,
I don't know. You're going to have to send me information on that. I don't think we have an agenda other than getting my Irish skin in the sun on the beach. That's the plan.
All right. Well, I'll send you some information. You'll have to check it out while you're here.
Awesome. So Wynta, I always find it interesting to meet I say high-level leaders because in my book, you are, just for our listeners and our watchers, our viewers to see, you are currently the commercial manager for the Sarasota County Property Appraiser's Office, and you're also the Florida Chapter of IAAO, their president. Correct?
That's correct. Yes, just sworn in April.
So we're gonna talk about those two things. You got sworn in on the other beach, on the other side of the state.
Daytona Beach, yes.
Daytona Beach. Yes. So you actually in one day, you watched the sunrise in Daytona and then probably the sunset in Sarasota County. That's pretty cool.
I did, and it's a little bit confusing living out here on the West Coast. And remember, okay, well, sun's coming up and it's not setting. So
no.
Yeah, it takes a little bit to get used to.
It's awkward. That's awkward.
It is.
Well, we are gonna unpack all of that, Wynta. I am very grateful that you are on our show. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day. Luckily, we're past the June 1st values, so you can take a deep breath a little bit, getting ready for your July 1st values. So I appreciate the fact that you're taking time out of your day to talk about everything that we're going to talk about. So thank you very much for doing that. I appreciate it.
Well, and thank you for putting on these podcasts and educating and highlighting some great professionals in our industry.
Yeah, so it's been pretty cool, right? So I just thought of that. I've talked to our assistant property appraiser who has been in our office for 30 years. He's over IT, tax roll, GIS, parcel records. And then we had Cecil on, who, again, a long tenured person in the appraisal industry. What was cool about Cecil, which you heard, is he worked in North Carolina, now worked in Florida, also sat on the board, for IAAO. And so he's a res guy. I know that you cut your teeth in res, And we're going to get into that. But now but now I get to talk to somebody that's in the commercial side.
Sure.
So that's a big deal.
Yeah,
So, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, and it's a newer venture for me. So about 5 years I've been in the commercial world. But again, happy to talk about that later on.
Yeah, listen, we're not going to get into all the boring stuff. A lot of people don't want to talk about all the crazy commercial stuff, but I do want to talk about this. Let's take you down your journey, your life. You originally started in the appraisal business back. I don't want to age you. You've been in this field for a few minutes. How about that? We'll just leave
Uh,
it at that.
I would say 27 years.
27 years.
27 years.
But what state did you start in?
In the state of New Hampshire. So my father, he was a fee appraiser. And I feel like a lot of us get our start in this business because they have a family member in real estate, either the appraisal side or maybe even mass appraisal. So started off in New Hampshire as an appraiser trainee with him.
So funny you say that because my dad is actually or was a fee appraiser. So that's interesting that you say that. I didn't ask. I didn't. It's funny. I didn't ask Cecil why he got into the appraisal industry, but that makes sense for you, and it makes sense for me, right? So my dad was a fee appraiser, worked out of his house, needed some help, wanted me to get into the business. Fun fact, though, I will say some funny things here. I think he really didn't want me to get into law enforcement. I was really interested in getting into law enforcement at the time, and so my dad was like, "Hey, why don't you come?" And we can do a business together. And so I was working with him, and I'm like, yeah, I don't think this is my cup of tea. I don't think I could cut myself, in the fee appraisal industry. So then I actually got a job with the Sumter County Property Appraiser's Office because to me that was like a career. I think at the time. My dad was self-employed. He's, working on his own, very up and coming fee appraiser business in Lake County, and so I didn't gravitate towards that fee appraisal, like Mike Twitty, he's done that
Yeah.
forever in Pinellas County. So it's so interesting to hear that you did that with your father.
And I did, and it was short-lived. I think I ended up working for him about a year and a half, and I just wanted to find my own way and make my own, right, rather than basically given this job. So I ended up leaving him and working for a reval company. And reval companies aren't really a thing here in the state of Florida.
Right.
But for those who don't know what a reval company is, and this is in the state of Florida where I did this, is a company will be hired by the county, the city, or so forth to come in and do the data collection and the reassessment for that county or city. So I really just started off as a measurer and lister for it was Vision Appraisal Technologies in the state of Florida, in the state of New Hampshire, and I did that for about a year and a half.
So you actually spent some time in multiple states, right? So
I did,
New
yeah.
Hampshire, let's see if I did my homework right. New Hampshire, Indiana, and Massachusetts. Is that accurate?
So Massachusetts was the reval company, but
Okay.
that assignment was in Seabrook, New Hampshire.
Okay.
So really working for the state of New Hampshire. But yes, I actually did have a pit stop from New Hampshire, Kansas. I don't talk about that year.
Kansas.
A
Wow.
small
Okay.
town of 3,000 called Goodland, Kansas. So there for a
Goodland,
short,
Kansas.
Goodland, Kansas, yes. About 3 hours from Denver off the western border of Kansas, Colorado. So that was an adventure, but then ultimately ended up in Indiana after that, where I jumped back into the appraisal world.
So were you just, that's a lot of moving. That's a lot.
It is.
And not just like moving around the state, you're like moving states. And New Hampshire and Massachusetts, kind of far away from Kansas,
Absolutely.
kind of far
Yeah,
away from Indiana. And then you're like, you know what? I think I'm kind of tired of the cold. I think I'm going to jump to Florida.
exactly. and I haven't looked back. So
And you haven't looked back. So I was going to ask you because one of my questions is I'm a big sports fan, a huge sports fan. You're in well, now we know the truth. You weren't really in Boston. I was wondering if you were a Boston fan, a
I
Boston
am.
sports fan.
Yes.
Oh, you are.
Yeah. So if you're in New Hampshire, you are a Red Sox, Patriots, Bruins. You're
All
covering
of
the
them.
bases. All Boston.
Well, I'm a huge Atlanta Braves fan. I'm very hurt because your Red Sox just beat us 2 out of 3 games this past weekend, so I'm a little hurt by that.
Well, I'm
But
sorry.
no, you're not. I don't think
No,
any
no, that's true.
Boston
I'm
fan
not.
is ever sad that they've actually won sporting events. So then the second question is, you were in Indiana. Again, I'm gonna go with the sports thing.
Yeah.
Are you pulling for the Pacers in the NBA Finals? Or do you
Um,
not follow basketball?
I don't follow it.
Okay. All right.
So I was rooting for the Knicks, only because the
Oh,
rest of the family was rooting for the Knicks, and that obviously fell
well,
through. But here
that's
we are.
okay. That's okay. So now that means if you're rooting for the Knicks, that means you're mad that the Pacers won, which means you're probably pulling for Oklahoma, the Oklahoma City Thunder. That's probably who you're pulling for then.
I think so. Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, we'll just leave it at that. So all of this time in your reappraisals, is that residential or was that residential and commercial?
Solely residential.
Solely
Yes.
residential.
Yes.
A question that I enjoyed asking. Now, did you work for any government property appraisers offices in those 3 states?
I did, yes. So in the state of
Or
New
4?
Hampshire, yeah. So after I worked for the Reval company in the state of New Hampshire, I moved on to the city of Nashua assessor's office. And that's really what started my, being in the local government in the property appraiser world. From there, I worked in the state of Indiana for, done at the time by township. So Marion County is basically Indianapolis. And at the time, it was a township structured. So the townships were ultimately responsible for the evaluation. I believe in 2009, they consolidated township government with the county. So at that point in time, we all had to kind of jump ship and go to the county seat and basically reapply for a position in the county assessor's office. So worked for the Marion County assessor's office, and then straight from Indiana to Sarasota County, and I have been here for 15 years.
So a fun question that I asked Cecil, because he comes from North Carolina, and then it goes to Palm Beach County. Two of the things that were big deals between the two were in North Carolina, and you're going to have to help me because I'm not familiar with any of those, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Kansas, or Indiana. But in North Carolina, the assessors were appointed. And then obviously he comes to Florida and they're elected. And not to get into any kind of major debate on one or the other, I just asked him a quick opinion. So I'm curious, in those different states, were they appointed assessors / appraisers, or were they elected?
So in New Hampshire, it is appointed. Indiana, it is elected.
Okay. And so appointed, elected, and then now you're in Florida where they're elected. Which one do you think is the best method?
The best. I mean, I think there are. I think there are differences. I don't know if there is a best. So I know in particular in New Hampshire, the individual that was appointed came with 30 years of appraisal experience, right? So you have that aspect when it is an appointed position. When we're talking about an elected position, from what I've seen, there was not always a maybe appraisal background to that. So a lot of elected officials here in the state of Florida that do have that background, but I would say that that's probably the difference that I've experienced is just having that background in an appointed part of the qualifications to being an assessor in the state of New Hampshire was to have the experience,
Right.
Understanding the maybe complex scenarios with commercial property,
Right.
residential property. So I would say that that's the difference. Again, I wouldn't say there's one that is a best case
Yeah,
scenario.
and that might not
Yeah.
have been a good word for that. Maybe just maybe explaining some differences, which you just did. Which, and I will tell you, the answer you just gave is pretty much on par with what Cecil, just like in society and with human beings, and it's not just Florida, it's not just the USA, it's all across the world. Sometimes you could have some people when they're appointed, with city councils or county government. When I talk about this to citizens training classes, one of the differences is, hey, listen, as an elected person, I'm elected by the people, so I answer to you, the citizen, the property owner, whereas somebody that's appointed answers directly to the people that hired that individual. And so sometimes that could be a challenge. And so, yeah, so maybe best wasn't the right word there, but definitely there's differences.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So what I'm always curious. I like to move. I like to. There's a book out there called "Move Your Cheese," and so it's one of my favorite books of all time. And like I can tell you, looking in my office right here, I have probably moved my desk in my 5 years here like 5 times. Like moved it in different places. Like I moved furniture. I don't mind moving. I'm just curious from you. What made you move those different times? Was it just, change of scenery? You just wanted to change of scenery, or you wanted to
Um,
gain some practice, some experience?
Not quite. So, my ex-husband is a meteorologist with the
Uh,
National Weather Service.
you were a tornado chaser.
I tried, but you would think in Kansas there'd be plenty of opportunity. Not so much on the west side of the state. It's pretty
Yeah.
quiet.
I don't know if I would like to be in Tornado Alley. I don't think I
No.
would like that at all. I've just seen we're obviously used to hurricanes, but
Yeah.
like when with a tornado, and I feel bad for all the victims that I ever have to deal with that, but you just don't know when they're coming.
Well, and at least here we have that notice. We have
Sure.
that warning that something's coming our way.
Well,
But you're right. There's no warning, and they usually happen in the middle of the night.
yeah, and Cecil and I talked about that. The devastation of that previous hurricane that made it all the way up into that Georgia, Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina devastation because they just didn't know it was coming. Floridians know when hurricanes are coming. They know to be prepared. They know to get off the water. You're in
Yeah.
Sarasota County. We're going to get into that a little bit, but I mean, we know it's coming. Well, those poor innocent victims in those states just had no idea, and it's the same way with tornadoes. So devastating. So you come to Florida with all that experience, and then you get hired. Excited about the new chapter.
Yeah, absolutely. I was ready to jump in and bring the skills that I had here to Sarasota. I was hired as a residential appraiser, and I served that role for about 6 years until I was promoted to the assistant residential manager.
I gotcha. So what does that mean to you? What is that manager, that leadership type? I love leadership. I mean, I could talk about leadership for days. But what did that mean to you in your career?
So, for me, leadership, and it really has always been this way, is, being the kind of leader that I want to lead me. So I've just kind of focused on, what skill sets does that leader have for me? That's being empathetic, it's being approachable, it's being fair. And I want, I maintain an open door policy. So I want people to feel like they can come to me, because I know that's what I want in a leader.
Yeah. And let me ask you this. So I love the nature versus nurture conversation. Some people you want to argue you're either born a leader or are you taught to be a leader? And explain to me or our audience, like, where do you feel like you got some of your leadership traits from?
Um, I would say it's probably a combination of just observing, maybe figuring out based on past leadership
Yep.
of, what to do, what not to do, how I felt in certain situations
Yep.
and I've read a couple of your articles in F&E that kind of talk about those situations, micromanagement, and being subjected to some of those items, you realize that's not the way that you want to lead. So, I think part of it is experience. It is, taking that step further and, educating yourself, whether that's through podcasts, through books, exposing yourself because, I never want to be in a situation where I think I know everything as it relates to leadership. I believe I still have growth. I can learn.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because that's the way I feel. I'm not. I wasn't really fortunate to have a whole lineage of leaders above me in my family. It just didn't happen. I would have loved to have spent some time with my grandfather before he passed away. I was too young, but he was a World War II Army officer, Purple Heart, just heroes of all Army heroes.
Wow.
But I didn't get a chance to speak to him. So, but my point by that is, I just didn't have that, right? It was funny in the podcast that we talked with Coach Miller. I said, tell me something that is one of your biggest traits, one of the things that you identify as. And he goes, I'm an insecure overachiever, was his words. And I felt like that was an amazing statement because I kind of feel like that's how I was.
Yeah.
And I started seeing other people as I was going through my career. And I'm like you, I watched enough bad leadership to know what I did not want to do. I've
Yeah.
watched enough good leaders to know exactly how I wanted to treat other people, and that made a bigger impact on me. And so I'm with you. I'm more of the nurture part of that. I don't think it was a natural instinct for me because it just wasn't. Because I wasn't a captain on any of my sports teams
Yeah.
growing up, and I wasn't on an honor roll when I was a young academic student. When I was in the military, I really truly wasn't a leader. It wasn't until I got into law enforcement that I started seeing people that I wanted to emulate, and that was a big deal for me. Um, and so I have some good examples of both sides, the good and the bad. And so when I started to excel in my leadership ranks in the military or in the law enforcement. I knew exactly how I wanted to be, and
Mm.
it worked, and it resonated with our staff or my staff at the time. So I brought that here, and I genuinely feel like, and I don't know if this is how it is down in Sarasota County. So I'm not talking about your
Yeah.
office or your organization, but just in Sarasota County specifically. I just feel like there's never enough conversation in the county that people can relate to, whether that be government officials, whether that be business leaders, whether that be anybody in the community, because now everything, like you talked about, I love podcasts. We're doing it right now. We're doing a
Yeah. Yeah.
podcast right now. We're going to talk about your favorite leadership books or your favorite leadership people, but we need people in our counties that are leaders that will step up and show other people how to be good leaders. So how is that for you in Sarasota County? Do you have people you lean into as leadership mentors?
I would say I would say yes, but I would say that my involvement with the Florida chapter is really where these mentors have come from for me.
Sure.
The connections that I've made, these individuals, that are involved have really become mentors for me in this field. We've got some great individuals in our agency that are leaders. I always say that when someone is appointed a management role, I think there is this expectation that they're going to manage and lead. But personally, I think that, we need to spend more time with that leadership aspect of management. Whether that mean some additional training. And I think that's probably not just, in our profession, but throughout careers in general.
I'm going to kind of always lean back into some stuff that Coach Miller said. I really hope you listen to that one because he's amazing. But he said that one of his best qualities about himself that he likes about himself is he knows he doesn't know it all.
Yes.
Right. And I believe that some of the people that we don't want to follow as leaders, doesn't matter if it's our profession or another profession, is I don't want to hang out with anybody that feels like they know it all. If they feel like they're the smartest person in the room, I don't want to be with them.
Yeah.
I want to be with the people who are just as hungry as me and want to keep learning. I can tell you, I agree with you. That Florida Chapter IAAO is a big thing, and you definitely should be patting yourself on the back for that, being Madam President. But I think what's awesome about that is you took over for a gentleman that is absolutely phenomenal, in Kevin Hayes. One thing that I will always, encourage people, like especially when you're taking over that role, like you're now the Florida Chapter IAAO president. We'll get into the magnitude of that in a minute, but don't try to compare or compete with Kevin Hayes, because Kevin Hayes is Kevin Hayes, and you're Wynta, and you need to set your own flight plane for that. So that's a big deal.
It is, and I agree with what you say. You've got to remind yourself that I am me, and Kevin is Kevin, and Renee, who's our vice president, she's Renee. And so, while you look at Kevin, and I know I have big shoes to fill, I'm also confident in my ability. So,
sure.
But still, I work with a great group of people on that board, and it's just been a wonderful experience.
Well, I can tell you, just for our listeners to understand, so they've heard the IAAO term, so they're familiar with that for our listeners. And so there's chapters, I believe. Well, they're all over the world. I'm trying to think how many there was total. The last I heard, total 57. I don't know. I don't even want to throw a number on there. But the Florida chapter is one of the biggest and one of the most active in IAAO. If you go to a IAAO conference, Florida is the biggest representative at that conference, whether that be attendees, whether that be presenters. So that's a big deal. I believe we've had the most or the second most IAAO presidents come from Florida. So that's a big deal.
I believe that's correct. No, yeah. So we have about 1,000 members currently within our chapter.
In the Florida chapter.
In the Florida chapter alone.
Yep.
So
yeah, I meant how many members are in IAAO? So like you have the Florida chapter.
Yeah.
How many chapters are in IAAO?
I'm not sure how many chapters. I
stumped us both.
Yeah, you did.
Us both with that one.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know Texas has a big following.
Virginia, North Carolina.
Yeah, Virginia, exactly. So, we're always competing for that chapter of the year designation with IAAO. So I'm hopeful that this year we bring it back to the state of Florida.
So let's talk about that. Your designations, that's great that you talked about that. So you could just keep talking us into things. You have two of them, right? You really have three. You have the CFE, and then you have two designations, the AAS and the RES.
Yes, that's correct. So just recently received the AAS, which is the Assessment Administration Specialist. The RES is the Real Estate Evaluation Specialist.
Yep.
So, that's a process that's a matter of taking the appropriate coursework and then sitting for a 8-hour case study and then a 4-hour master exam. So I'm currently the only one here in Sarasota County that has a designation. So that is one thing that I really want to work towards is, whether that is a designation program for the agency. I'm currently working on some team members in the commercial department to get them up to speed in getting that designation, because I do believe that, putting, sending people for education, you're giving back
Right.
to them, and you're investing in them. And that's important to me.
So it's important to me too. I want to compare. So when people hear the word designations and hear this, I'm sorry, I should know this, but I don't know this. Do you have a college degree?
I do not.
Okay, so I will tell you, I do, and I'm only comparing it because I can tell you the CFE/CFA, which I have as appraiser, as the elected official, and the designations are extremely hard. They are extremely hard. I've taken a lot of college classes, and these things are probably more difficult and more challenging for our staff. It was hard for me. I don't have a designation yet, so kudos to you for having two. It is a big deal. I can tell you, at the Citrus County Property Appraiser's Office, we haven't had somebody with a designation in our office since the 90s.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so we're working on that. We're working on changing that. And I do feel like I need to have one. If I'm going to try to get our staff to do it, I'm going to try to do it too. So I have everything. I just need to go sit for the case study exam. So
Okay.
I need to do it.
Okay.
I know that. But we actually have 10 people right now in the pipeline in the next, well, we have one that's testing for his designation July 7th or 8th with Kevin
Wow.
Hayes. Well, I don't know if it's with Kevin Hayes, but somebody in his office. So we may have our first designation in July, which we're super proud of. And then in the
That's
next
very
2
exciting.
years, a good chunk of our staff don't fit the time requirement. Like some
Okay.
you have to have 5 years, 3
Yeah.
years. So
Yeah.
they've got to hit that requirement. But I think in the next 4 years, I'll just say next 5 years, the next 5 years, we should have 10 people with designations in our office when, right as of today, we have 0.
That's amazing, and that shows, commitment to, to the organization, to the public, by going out and doing all that you can to be, better at the end of the day. So
Sure. And tell our audience why having a designation is important in their respective fields. So there's 6 of them. There's 6 designations, I believe, if I'm accurate, and they hit in the different fields, appraisal field within our office, our organization, and those you can get from around the country. Anybody in IAAO can get these, but why is that important for our Florida property appraisers offices to have individuals or employees with designations?
I think for us, it shows that you are an expert in that field, right? So I have the RES designation, which is a residential, basically designation, and that shows that I understand. I understand residential appraisal. I can talk the talk. I would say that, by having that designation, the public can be confident that I'm doing everything that I can to, again, educate myself and keep up with trends. And, I would say that's probably the biggest thing for us.
Yeah, and that's important. You just mentioned the res side of it. We'll kind of compare the two. It's 2 totally different animals, residential / or versus commercial. For us, at least in Citrus County, our res side is about 75% of our tax roll.
Oh, wow.
Is that about consistent with you guys?
So we have 304,000 parcels. Of that, 16,000 are commercial parcels.
Okay. So we have
So what is-
100. We have 100. 100, and I had this. I know this number. It's like 150,000 parcels, and about 8,000 are commercial.
Okay. Oh, wow.
So, but as far as value goes, about 75 or 80% of that is res stuff. Um,
Okay.
I think we're going to see a shift in that in the next few years. I don't know because our residential market is not the resale market, but just new homes being added. But we're
Hmm.
getting a tremendous amount of commercial growth as well. So,
Wow. So we just added for the 2025 tax roll about 6,600 new structures to our tax roll.
oh wow.
Of that, 5,400 were new single-family residences. The other is made up of condominiums, so residential condominiums. We had about 500 of those, and then the balance being those commercial structures.
Well, those
So
condominiums, that's because you're on the beach. Everybody wants to be on the beach.
we are, yes. So,
I'm going to be on your beach this weekend. Not that
well,
anybody needs to see that in their visual. Let me ask you this real quick. We have been in the last 2 years, Citrus County has been affected by 4 hurricanes and 2 tornadoes, which is devastating to the victims. It's devastating to those who've been displaced. How has that affected Sarasota County?
yeah. So you have Hurricane Elaine
Yep.
back in September. So while it wasn't a direct hit to us, we did get that storm surge. And where we saw that storm surge was in the barrier islands, right? So Siesta Key, Longboat Key, St. Armands, where you're going to be visiting. All of that was basically underwater.
Mm.
So we had quite a bit of damage right after Helene. And then we're talking about 10, 12 days after, Sarasota County gets a direct hit from Hurricane Milton in October of 24. So we've been impacted quite a bit from these hurricanes. So as of January 1st of 25, we had 6,300 parcels that were impacted by some sort of storm damage. So right after those storms occurred, looking at that January 1st valuation date, we went out and, made a determination of which properties still suffered from that storm damage. So at the end of the day, again, about 6,200 properties with storm damage here in the county.
So I have an amazing marketing communications coordinator, Megan McGuire, who just, as we're talking, sent me our numbers. So how many did you say were affected total?
We have 6,200 parcels with
6,200.
hurricane damage.
So we had 980 with a total difference in just value, mean loss of value, $87 million.
Wow.
And and so I would imagine with you at 6,000 is going to be way above that.
Yeah, and I don't have those numbers for you.
That's because I'm not a good marketing communications coordinator.
I need someone feeding me those. Right.
It is special.
Yeah. I can only imagine. I will say though, a lot of the newer properties on the barrier islands, considering the more up to date building codes,
Sure.
They definitely fared better than those older properties. I mean, we saw some homes just wipe off their lots. But a lot of what we had to deal with is that flooding, that storm surge. So,
Which is what we have to deal with.
Yeah. I mean, the house looks fine on the outside, but that it was being taken over by water.
We actually had an issue, and I'm sure you all had the same thing. But so Citrus County got hit by Idalia the year before in 23. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so we had a number of houses being still under repair from Idalia because mm-hmm. where all the contractors are all over the state of Florida, right? And so it's taken some time, and then obviously you have insurance issues and FEMA issues. So a lot of our coastal areas were still being repaired by Idalia, and then Helene hit. So we're getting like the double whammy of that effect,
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, we weren't impacted so much by Idalia, but we did have a significant rain event
Yeah.
I want to say shortly before or after. And so we were kind of working our way through that. And then again, these two hurricanes in September and October, really, took a hit on our tax roll.
When you let's talk about tax roll for a second.
Yeah.
We just released a June 1st article, and so we our June 1st estimates. I think our number that we put on there was about 7.5% growth. A lot of people misread that in our county, saying that I know that the real estate market is leveling out and it's planing out. Well,
Yeah.
that's true. It is. It is leveling out, and I'm not going to disagree with them. Unfortunately, what they're just maybe a little misinformed because that's how much the tax base grew over a year. Not your residential, your home isn't going to go up 7% or 8%. The tax base grew 7%. So a couple questions off of that. Where do you know what your overall tax growth was for Sarasota County?
We're at about 6%.
6%. So not
Yeah.
much. So not
No.
Cecil said Palm Beach County was about the same, about 7. So,
Yeah.
I mean, so we're consistent. So Sarasota County, bigger than Citrus, but smaller than Palm Beach County. So you're seeing that percentage. So that's about the same. And then on that note, we've started a community outreach program here at the Citrus County Property Appraiser's Office 4 years ago, and it has been a godsend. We're in this new platform, which I'll talk about here in a second, and it is solely because I want to reach our property owners and help educate what we do. Is that something you all deal with in Sarasota County as well? The issues, maybe the misinformed, or they just don't understand.
Right. So your example about that 7.5 growth in citrus, we get items of those concerns as well. So, I think when you look at the value, right, we're looking at the just value that should be the market value of the property.
Sure.
And then you bring in the aspect of assess. And the relationship to the just value, and really it's that increase in just value, right? That is making up that
Right.
increase in taxable. So we do have a lot of that. We're really not on social media, but we try to get information out on our website and through our truth and millage notice that we send out. But I think at the end of the day, our part of our job is not only to appraise properties, but to educate and inform property owners as they call them and they don't understand. The one thing that we get all the time, and this is going to be more of a residential situation where you have that property owner who just bought their house, and I think Cecil
Right.
addressed this
Yep.
during his podcast, but had a property owner call. They bought $1 million property. Their cap was $600,000 from the prior owner. That goes away as soon as they purchase that new property. And a lot of the conversations I hear is, well, I probably wouldn't have bought the home had I known that
Yep.
that the taxes were going to be X. So, I think part of that is, getting the realtors involved and making sure they're educating the buyers in this process. But, I do think we should be doing the same and educating, informing.
Yeah, I feel like our office does a pretty good job with that. We've done a much better job over the last few years. That's one of the biggest things we hit on our training sessions. We put a lot of social media out on it. We actually changed our website on our property record cards. We will say, without cap, without a portability amount, this is what your taxes would be if it resold today. So I know that Mike Twitty, the Pinellas County property appraiser, was really pushing that on Zillow or trying to get new legislation to put that on Zillow and Realtor.com. And I'm not sure how that ended up for this last legislative session, but we took it in our own hands and put it on our website. And when we teach realtors and we're in public, that's one of the first things we hit on. So I agree. That's a big deal. Let's go back to your Florida Chapter IAAO president, because you dismissed that because I'm pretty sure you just don't like talking about yourself, but that is a big deal. I feel like there's a lot of great people in Florida, and we're very blessed to have you as our president. Can you tell me anything that maybe you would like to accomplish in your year as Madam President?
Yeah, so I'm looking. We do a great job. We put on two conferences. We do an annual conference in April, May time period.
Sure.
We also do a tangible personal property conference in
December.
December. Yeah, yep. So that's
I
coming
got
up.
I got asked to talk about my leadership philosophy at that conference,
Fantastic.
so I will be there.
That's great. I think leadership definitely has a role in tangible personal property as well as.
Tangibles, that's
Yeah,
another. We could have a whole show on tangible.
absolutely,
But we
absolutely.
won't do that. Not today. We'll just keep talking about your Madam Presidency. So, so
Okay.
you have two conferences.
Yep. So we have
Two
yep.
people
So
in
we
the
have two conferences. But what I'd like to be able to do is, I'm always looking for ways. How do we give back to the members, right? So you pay a membership dues, and you get discounted registration fees for the conferences, and then for any educational sessions that we may put on. But what I would like to do is put on webinars free to our members.
Love
Bring
it.
in maybe bring in some of the speakers from our annual conferences, because not everyone's always able to attend. There's budget concerns, and making sure that you can't exactly send your whole office to one of these conferences.
Right.
But if we can put on a webinar maybe after the conference to say, all right, well, here is Craig Dalton. He spoke about leadership, and he's going to basically go through that presentation once more and put it on to all of the members. So, we do provide the presentation materials, but I think you miss out on quite a bit to actually have the person there speaking and go beyond just these materials that we provide. So, I'd like to do something along those lines, on a monthly basis, again, just to, give back to the membership.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I would be a fan of that. On two parts. One, I would be more than happy if you needed it. I would love to be a presenter. I really enjoy it. Yes, I agree. When I'm doing a presentation, I feel like there's more emotion, and you're emotionally connected to the speaker if they're engaging, and so that's impactful. But I can tell you, I watch a lot of podcast or leadership presentations online, whether it be shorts or whether it be on YouTube or TED. I mean, look at TED Talks.
Yeah.
How impactful is TED Talks? And it's only a 10-minute speech or whatever it is. I could watch thousands of those things.
I,
And so those, if you do those things, it's good. And then like you just talked about, I have to be a good steward of taxpayer dollars. And that's every
yeah,
property appraiser in the state of Florida. And so they can't send their whole office. I mean, it's
absolutely.
expensive. And so, and then it's taking them away from their daily function. But if we could record videos, much like we're
Hmm.
doing right now, and get that out, maybe people will watch. I don't know. And Wynta, this is what I'll challenge you to be. Um, One of my favorite quotes is by Henry Ford. If you always do what you've always done, you always get what you always got. And I feel like I'm going to be different as the property appraiser of Citrus County. And so, and I think you, as the president of Florida Chapter, I think you do whatever you feel like is the best for the organization. And I can tell you, in today's technology, in today's world, and maybe that's one of the good things that COVID brought, right? Maybe
Hmm.
COVID brought the ability for people to relate to people on video like this or podcast. And so it opened up the world of being able to do things differently. And so I think that's a beautiful thing. And
Yeah.
so I think what you're proposing is a great idea, and I think it needs to be leveraged more.
Yeah, no, I'm excited about that. We actually have a retreat where I'll meet with all of the board members to discuss, maybe ideas, things that we can do for the chapter. We'll reflect on the conference. What do we need to change? What worked? What didn't work? And then we meet and put together what this year looks like. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to seeing what other ideas are brought to the table, and then looking forward to implementing some of these ideas.
I would challenge them to think outside the box, like this proposal you just did. I think it's great. I think it's a great opportunity. I think it could be leveraged a lot. We actually we've attended in the past a leadership conference, but it's virtual and it's housed out of Chicago. And
Oh,
what
okay.
we've done is we would get our leadership team in a room and just watch it virtually, right? And then you can show them different things throughout the year. So it's super cool. And I'm only telling you that because there's power in video, and I think that there's some things that you could do with that. And listen, I like being a trailblazer. I tell people all the time. So my buddy Coach Miller said that he's insecure. He's an insecure overachiever.
Yeah.
I say that for me, I'm unapologetically me. And so I'm going to be different. And I'm just going to use one example. When I first got elected, somebody told me that I needed to wear a suit and tie every single day. Every single day, I need to wear a suit and tie.
Wow.
So that's what I did. And that wasn't me. And so I had to get back to being me. And so, like, if I didn't have to wear socks to work, I wouldn't. Like, if I didn't feel like people would think that was gross. And so, be you. Be a trailblazer, and I think that's a good thing. So let's lean into something else, but that I want to hit.
Okay.
You're a commercial manager
I am. Yes.
over one of the biggest counties in Florida, in Sarasota County. You're currently the Florida Chapter IAAO president, and you have a couple designations, which is huge, and one of your only ones in your office. So let's lean into something that is the obvious.
Yeah.
You're a female leader in your office, a female leader in the state, and what does that mean to you and maybe the other females in your office or the females in the industry? Because most people will know this is a male-dominated industry. It is what it is. Just like law enforcement, just like the military was. And so, like, can you tell me what that means to you and how what that feels like?
Yeah. So, I think when I was first starting off in this industry, it was definitely apparent, right? I remember, again, working for Reval or even earlier in my years in New Hampshire, being the only female in valuation. Sure, we had, administrative assistants, and maybe front counter help. But as far as, boots on the ground, being out in the field, I was one of the only ones for, it had to be years. Now though, I just, I don't think about it.
Sure.
And what I'm seeing though, perfect example, our executive board. Well, I'll give you a little bit of history. So the Florida chapter, we've had 37 presidents, past presidents of the Florida chapter. Of the 37, 12 have been females.
Look at you with the numbers. I
Yeah.
like it. That's a good one. I mean, that there's truth in numbers.
There is. The current board, we have 11 board members. Of the 11, we have 3 males on the board. So the females are representing.
Tides are turning, and
Yeah.
I have a daughter, and I want her to be her, and I don't want her to be the deterrent.
No, yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Yep,
and
absolutely.
that means a lot. Like, I can tell you the most, and I say this in the most professional manner possible. I feel like the most professional person or the most powerful person in my life is my wife, and she's super talented, very accomplished, published author, and she's a rock star
Amazing.
in the school district. And I it's same thing. We could talk about the race bias or gender bias, but at the end of the day, man, I just want somebody that comes to work. I want doers and thinkers. I don't care if you're a male or female. But I don't know what it's like to sit in your shoes. I just don't. And
Yeah.
so it's I know that means a lot to your female staff to see where you're at.
Absolutely. when I first started in the commercial department, and this is just out of coincidence, we've had retirements along the way. We've brought in new team members, and right now, the commercial department, we have 3 female commercial appraisers and 1 male appraiser. So it's interesting to see that shift of
Sure.
females coming into the industry. And then there are some great female mentors in our industry. Dorothy Jacks, Honorable Dorothy Jacks, Palm Beach.
I was just about to
see,
say, if I
yeah,
had one mentor in this entire state in this industry, it's Dorothy Jacks. Cecil Jackson's a great friend of mine, but I mean, if I needed to call, like, because there's only 67 property appraisers in the state of Florida, right? There's only
yep,
67 of us, and so if I need something, I'm calling Dorothy Jacks,
yeah.
100%. So
Yeah, just to see her make her way, from starting in
she's a
the,
trailblazer.
she is,
Use that
yeah,
word.
she's great. Sean Wilson, she's an MAI. You've probably seen her at some of the IAAO conferences. She's a presenter. Just these really confident, intelligent, hardworking women in the industry, and these are people that I look up to.
So
And
for those that are listening to us, an MAI is basically a PhD in appraisal. So it's super hard to get. There's not many of them. Fortunate, Pinellas County property appraiser Mike Twitty is an MAI. Very few in the world. And so when she says the MAI, I can't tell you what it stands for. Maybe Megan can look that up for us. It's maybe it's probably like a master's in appraisal industries or something. I don't know.
that sounds good.
We'll go with that.
Yeah, but I mean that process of getting that designation, that's years in making. You are the expert
Sure.
in all thing appraisal. So to see again, to be able to look up to someone like Sean, who she's an expert witness in court cases, is and again, just that confidence is those are the people that I look up to.
I think I had a better title for the MAI because Megan has found it. The answer is member of Appraisal Institute.
Too.
That doesn't even sound cool. Like I would come up with something else for
Right.
that. I will tell you, when I look at our office, I think we're split. I think we're, probably 50-50 as far as male female goes. And I think I look in all of our departments. I'm just mentally going through it. And it's split like 50-50. Like, maybe the only one that doesn't have it is GIS. But there's definitely females breaking into the industry. And I think what we've tried to teach with leadership in our organization is see the employee first, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what they are. I mean, one of our field appraisers, and this is fun. Her name is Emily Rogers, and she's a field appraiser, and she actually out of high school became a welder,
Oh, wow.
and so she wanted to be a welder. And then she starts a family and realizes like that's a rough life. And so she needs a career. And so she gets in and now she's one of our field appraisers. And I think she's going to go on and do great things because she's young and I think she's going to do great things. But yeah, so I mean, welder and
Yeah.
now field appraiser, female, so she's breaking the differences down there. Tell me about what like leading in your office is like, not just a female, but just in general. How many employees do you guys have?
Yep. So we have 65 full-time employees. In the commercial department, we have 4 appraisers, and then we have 1 opening at this moment in time. So
Do you include in your commercial department TPP in ag, or is it just commercial?
no, just commercial. So ag actually falls under residential. And then tangible, separate department, and there are 3 full-time employees in the tangible department.
Right, because of all your commercial businesses. So we actually incorporate all them all together for us for in our commercial department, and I do that for
Okay.
this reason because TPP is generally connected with commercial properties.
Yes.
ag typically has tangible personal property on it. With the tractors and all the farming equipment, if they're a legitimate bona fide commercial business, and so with that statute, it says that, right, bona fide commercial
Yes,
business.
correct.
So I put our ag and our TPP in our commercial department, so it's all one. But that's just how
Yeah.
we roll down
I,
here
no,
in
I,
Citrus.
I think that makes sense. Definitely.
Yeah. So let me ask you this: this is almost your rapid fire
Oh.
time. What is your favorite leadership book or podcast?
Um,
I'll give you an out.
so there is it's called the 7-Minute Leadership Podcast, and they're just short, 7 minutes. Well, you got to get through the first 2 minutes of commercials at the
Commercials.
beginning of them.
We don't
But
have commercials in our
no,
podcast, but the CCPA Playbook is not sponsored by anybody except for the citizens of Citrus County.
no, that's great. So once you get through the 2 minutes of commercials, and again, they're nice and short, and I like them because I can commit to listening through from start to end. I'm pretty busy. Unfortunately, I take some of this work home with me. I know, I know,
Wynta,
I know.
I wasn't
Well,
going to talk about it, but we're going to have to talk about that now. You take
well,
work home. That is a big no-no at our office.
it it is. And I'll explain why.
Okay. All right.
So we're down currently one appraiser, and I think as a manager, as a leader, you have to make a decision. Do you take that work and you spread it upon the remaining 4 appraisers and add that additional workload and now maybe overwhelm them? Or do you, we're doing our best to hire, we're trying to, maybe be creative on, do we break up the role? But regardless, I take some of that home, so I'm not.
I will tell you, I will say I try to encourage our staff not to take work home.
Yeah.
But my leaders in our organization, and I'm just as guilty, so I give you a hard time about that.
Okay.
They are committed to the mission. They're committed to the citizens of Citrus County because the work has to be done,
Yeah.
right? They're committed to perfection of it being fair and accurate and transparent. And so sometimes they got to do it. Sometimes they got to take it home. I mean, I'm a 24/7 guy. I like dogs. I'll use that athletic terminology. My leaders are dogs. I don't require that because I come from a background in military and law enforcement where I was in the red 24/7 and on call. So we're constantly on the go. And so I try not to do that. I try to preach work-life balance.
Yes.
And another thing is like be where your feet are. And so if you're home, make sure you're home, and if you're at work, make sure you're at work. So that's a big deal.
Yeah.
So that is a big deal. So okay, so you walked into this one. I will tell you, this is a fun fact for our listeners, but Wynta met her husband at work.
I
Her
did.
current husband at work. Tell us about that.
So,
If you'd like to, if you don't want to, I get it.
no. I'm happy to, because he is someone I look up to. He's a role model for me, and I'm very proud of him. So I'm happy to
Is
talk
he
about
sitting in
that.
the room?
No.
Okay, you looked over. I'm like, is he sitting in there right now? What's
No,
what's his title? What's he in? What role is he in?
so he is the chief deputy, but he oversees the administrative side
I got you.
of our department. So his
Okay.
title is chief deputy, but oversees title, exemptions, customer service, IT, deeds.
Super awesome guy. I will tell you, he's a super awesome guy. Fun fact: so you met your husband there at work. I actually met my wife in my previous job. I always tell people, we always it always comes up like, where'd you meet your spouse at? And I'm like, well, I've met her in jail. And I
I
just
love
leave it hanging for a few seconds. Because technically I did. I was a major crimes detective at the sheriff's office, and she was working in our judicial division, and just happened to be at the jail that day, doing some stuff. Maybe I should say she worked in our civil department, but she just happened to be out at the jail that day covering for somebody. And I was, I was I was arresting a suspect where I had brought them to the jail, and then it is what it is. So I met her at the jail.
Well, and if you think about the amount of time that you spend at work, I mean, it's only natural for, people to meet and,
Sure,
perhaps
sure.
grow into a relationship. But in saying that, I did come early in my career from an office where nepotism was a concern. So I've been just very mindful of that. And even though we've both held leadership roles, we've definitely made a point to keep that work personal life separate and never try to blur those lines. And it's something that I take serious because I know how important just the trust and fairness is in this position.
Yeah, I will tell you. So we had a policy when I took over that we weren't allowed to hire family members at all. Anybody related, doesn't matter. Nepotism doesn't just clear as day. You cannot
Yeah.
hire a family member cannot work for us, and I totally disagreed with that. I totally 100% disagreed with it. It's one of the first things I changed, and I will tell you because what greater honor can you have if you have somebody working here and they want one of their family members working here, as long as they're not working under them as the leader.
Right.
Like I could never have any of my family work here, right? Because I'm the boss.
Right.
But I
Exactly.
mean, so we have a husband and wife. We have a mother-in-law, son-in-law. We had a dad, son. We had a brother, sister. So I think it's great, if you can do it in the right. Now, I will tell you, and Nancy will tell you, she could not work here, even if I wasn't the boss. Like we cannot work together because it
Yeah.
just would not work. And she's alpha and I'm alpha, and it is what it is. But like, I mean, but if it worked, like we have, Angie Mack works in our administrative department, and then Herb Mack is our commercial manager. So your counterpart,
Okay.
awesome. They're awesome. They're an awesome couple, and it doesn't bother them. They take breaks together, they eat lunch together, and then they go home together. They ride the car in together. They go home together. Um, Nancy and I could not do that. I love my wife, but she's good at what she does at the school district, and I'm good at what I do here. So we'll keep it at that. So,
Well, and,
um,
and I do have people will ask me all the time, how do you work with your husband, all day long? And, I think the fact that I'm in a completely different department, he's overseeing a different group of people.
sure.
I think that's how it works. And I know personally, I want to do my best because it does reflect, directly on him. So I'm just, like I said, I've just
Yeah.
been very conscious and aware, and
But
and
you're
and it
you.
works.
But you're you, and he's
I'm
him, and
that
uh,
is correct.
great couple. And I'm sure the Sarasota County residents are appreciative of your hard work. I mean, look, you come to the table with 27 years experience, and how many years experience does he have total?
Um, Geez, I think he's been here for just about 18 years, and then he was in mass appraisal before that. So probably about 25, 26 years.
So collectively, you have 50 years experience, and I don't know why any company or organization would frown on that. And I can tell you, if most people or if somebody would frown on something like that, then they're probably jealous or have issues with their own self first. This
Yeah.
has nothing to do with you two. It's more about their self reflection, and unfortunately, they're just taking it out on you. So,
Yeah.
all right. So 7 minute podcast is your
Yeah.
favorite go to.
Yeah.
I will tell you one of my favorites is Ryan Leak, Leveling Up. He is amazing. I feel like him and I are friends, and because I say that because you can go on his website, and he talks about leadership all day long. That's one of his things. But you can go on his website, put your phone number in, and daily he'll send you a text, like a motivational text or
Oh,
video. And so I feel like he's talking to me, like he's like, "Hey, Craig, I think you should watch this. Like, I think that's important." But that's something that I always try to push. That's a good one. I really listen to a lot of Greg Crochelle, so that's a good thing. All right, so you lived up north,
Yes.
and now you're in Florida.
Yes.
Sweet tea or unsweet tea?
No caffeine.
No caffeine.
Zero. Water.
I am wired on, let's see, I have a pre-workout in the morning before I work out. I have 1 cup of coffee, and then I do an energy drink.
Wow.
Yeah,
So,
so I'm wired. My staff loves it. We're on fire here when I come in. Let's see. So you've lived up north, and you've lived in the beach down south. Mountains or beach?
I'm gonna say mountains, I think.
Okay.
I'm gonna say mountains. Maybe if you would have asked me in New Hampshire, I would have said beach. So I think, you hate to say you get used to your surroundings, but maybe I have. So I'm gonna say mountains.
Okay. All right. I think I've got it. It's kind of like my music. Well, okay, that was another thing, but I will get to it. It's kind of like you could hit shuffle on my music, and you're going to get all kinds of stuff. You're going to get from rap to rock to country to jazz to orchestra stuff. I think it just kind of depends on what mood I'm in. Like this weekend, I am ready to be at the beach, but man, next weekend I could be ready to go to North Georgia and sit in the mountains.
Yeah.
So
I'm right there with you.
it's my vibe. It's my jam. Well, listen, I really appreciate you, Wynta. I appreciate the effort that you put into your office because that's important. I know the commercial department's very hard to deal with. And then you take on the task of being the Florida Chapter IAAO President. And where I'm super excited to be in the chapter and watch you do your thing. I will tell you, are you presenting in Orlando at the national conference?
I am not.
Right.
I'm. It's on my to-do list.
It's on your to-do list.
It's
All
on
right.
my to-do list.
Well,
So
I look forward to seeing. Oh, well, let's see. The next Florida chapter annual conference is in Orlando, also, right?
it is. Yes. Yep.
Why y'all
We're
making
gonna.
us go to Disney all the time? So the national conferences in IAAO, and now the Florida chapter IAAO conferences in Orlando. I guess I'll be in Orlando twice this year.
You'll need to get some Mickey ears. We'll be there a lot.
Ooh, no, I will not. Well, I'll bring some family. I'll bring some staff members that love Disney, and then that will be our go-to. But listen, I will tell you, if you need anything from me, I'm here for you. I appreciate you being a part of our episode and all you do for all the appraiser organizations in the state of Florida and around the country. So I appreciate you, Wynta. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, and thank you for your support. I appreciate it, Craig.
Absolutely. Make sure you share this with all your 305,000 parcels down in Sarasota County and your 65 coworkers, including your husband.
I'll see what I can do. I'm sure I will.
Awesome. Thank you, Wynta. I hope you have a great day. Say something nice. Somebody change your life.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Greg.
Bye-bye.